In the grand crystal-lit ballroom of Alexander Voss's sprawling coastal estate, overlooking the restless Atlantic, the 35-year-old billionaire stood motionless on the polished mahogany platform. Tall and broad-shouldered, with piercing ice-blue eyes that rarely softened, neatly trimmed dark hair silvering faintly at the temples, clean-shaven features carved sharp by years of discipline, he wore a midnight black tuxedo tailored so precisely it seemed part of his skin. Below him stretched 243 candidates, each hand-picked through months of ruthless vetting. Supermodels in liquid silver gowns that caught every light, tech prodigies in bespoke charcoal suits, humanitarian award winners with perfect teeth and practiced poise, ambassadors' daughters, Rhodes scholars, former Olympians. The air buzzed with expensive perfume, camera shutters, and the low hum of speculation. Everyone knew what was at stake: control of an $87 billion empire built on revolutionary green energy patents, AI-driven education platforms, and a global web of free clinics and trade schools designed to break cycles of poverty. Whoever Alexander chose tonight would inherit not just wealth, but the power to preserve, or destroy, his entire moral legacy. Then, without preamble, without glancing at his notes, Alexander lifted one steady hand and pointed across the glittering sea of perfection straight toward the shadowed corner near the service doors. Every head turned. There stood Emily Hart, 28, event staff member who had arrived before dawn to coordinate catering. Curly auburn hair swept into a simple low ponytail that let a few tendrils escape around her face, warm brown eyes wide with disbelief, fair skin dusted with faint freckles across the bridge of her nose and cheeks, dressed in her usual work attire, a modest navy blouse tucked neatly into a knee-length black pencil skirt that followed the generous, natural curves of her fuller figure. Sensible black flats, no jewelry except a thin silver chain her mother had given her years ago. She clutched a clipboard to her chest like a shield. The room inhaled as one. Alexander's voice, low and rough with something close to desperation, cut through the silence. Her. Chaos erupted, gasps, shouts, flashes blinding, but Alexander ignored it all. His gaze never left Emily. Security parted instinctively as he descended the steps, long strides eating the distance. When he reached her he spoke so quietly only she could hear over the roar. Please don't run. I know this feels insane. Just, give me 5 minutes. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it might bruise them. She nodded once, numb, and let him guide her through a discreet side door into a long marble corridor lined with abstract sculptures that probably cost more than her apartment building. Inside the private study, walls of dark walnut, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the black ocean, he closed the door and leaned against it as though his legs might give out. I'm not well, he said without flourish. A progressive neurodegenerative disorder. Rare. Aggressive. The best specialists say 6 months, maybe less. I've spent the last year searching for someone, anyone, I could trust to carry forward what I've built. Not the money. The mission. If the board gets control after I'm gone, they'll liquidate everything within a quarter. Schools closed. Clinics shuttered. Millions of lives quietly erased so shareholders can see another zero on their spreadsheets. He met her eyes. I interviewed, vetted, profiled all 243 of them. Perfect on paper. And none of them were right. Emily's voice came out small. I wasn't even supposed to be visible tonight. I'm the one who makes sure the champagne doesn't run out. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, tired and genuine. Exactly. Last month, at the pediatric wing opening in Baltimore, the one I funded, you were there adjusting a 6-year-old's leg braces while every executive posed for the ribbon-cutting photo. You didn't look around for credit. You just did it. I watched the security footage later. 3 times. That's when I knew. Tears stung her eyes, not pride, but the sharp, unfamiliar pain of being witnessed. No one had ever looked at her actions that closely. Alexander stepped closer. I'm asking you to consider this. Not out of charity. Not because I think you need saving. Because I think you might be the only person who would actually protect what I care about when I can't anymore. The helicopter ride to his private villa felt like a dream sequence from someone else's life. City lights blurred below. Inside the cabin, Alexander sat across from her, sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing the faint tremor in his hands he tried to hide. They talked, really talked, for the first time. He told her about losing both parents in a car accident at 17, about building his first company from a dorm room to prove he could survive alone, about the hollow ache that grew with every billion added to the balance sheet. She told him about small-town childhoods where "you'd be so pretty if" was the kindest thing people said, about auditions and interviews where eyes flicked away the moment she walked in, about learning to shrink herself so the world wouldn't notice how much space she took up. When he reached across and covered her hand with his, the contact felt electric and terrifying. "You don't shrink," he murmured. "Not with me." Days melted into weeks. Doctors swarmed her with tests, lawyers arrived with towering stacks of documents, irrevocable trusts, succession clauses, ethical oversight boards she would chair. Alexander refused to let stylists erase her. He asked her to keep wearing the navy blouse on quiet evenings because "it's the first thing I ever really saw you in." They walked the private beach at twilight, waves foaming around their ankles. One night, under a sky thick with stars, he stopped and turned to her. Moonlight silvered the planes of his face. "I thought love was something I'd already used up," he said. "Turns out I was just waiting for someone brave enough to show me I was wrong." She rose on her toes, he bent down. Their first kiss tasted of salt air and unshed tears, slow, searching, then deepening until her hands fisted in his shirt and his arms banded around her waist, holding her like she might vanish. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "However long we have." 10 days later the illusion shattered. Alexander collapsed in the middle of a strategy call, body folding like paper. The villa's medical wing became a war zone of monitors and hushed voices. The verdict was brutal: progression had accelerated. The only remaining hope was an experimental allogeneic stem cell transplant using a living donor's marrow. Every candidate from the ballroom had already been tested. None matched. When Emily's blood work returned, the head immunologist looked at her with something close to awe. "You're a perfect HLA match. 1 in a million." But the risks to the donor were severe: general anesthesia, infection, graft versus host complications, possible permanent immune suppression. Months of recovery. Potentially career-ending fatigue. Her independence, the small, hard-won life she had built, could disappear. She fled to the cliffside bench at dawn, knees drawn up, watching the horizon bleed pink and gold. Alexander found her there, still weak, leaning on a cane he hated using. He lowered himself beside her with effort. "I won't let you do this," he said, voice cracking. "I can't lose you to save myself." Emily turned, tears already falling. "You asked me to guard your legacy. If that legacy includes you breathing tomorrow, then I'm not asking permission." He pulled her into his arms, face buried in her hair, shoulders shaking. They stayed like that until the sun cleared the water. That night, in the soft glow of bedside lamps, they came together for the first time, gentle, reverent, every caress a promise. His hands traced her curves with wonder, not hesitation, her lips mapped the scars he hid under tailored shirts. When they finally stilled, tangled in sheets, he whispered against her throat, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever known." The backlash arrived like a tidal wave. Doctored screenshots flooded social media, fabricated emails implying the announcement was a cynical PR stunt to inflate stock prices before a rumored acquisition. Tabloid covers screamed "Billionaire's pity pick," and worse, zooming in on Emily's body with arrows and snide commentary. She stopped looking at her phone after the third death threat. Alexander found her in the library, curled in an armchair, staring blankly at the wall. He knelt in front of her, took both her hands. None of it changes what I see when I look at you. She laughed, bitter and broken. They're saying I'm a charity case. That you're slumming it. He cupped her face. Let them talk. The only opinion that matters is the one I carry in my chest every time you walk into a room. He kissed her then, fierce, possessive, pouring every unspoken vow into it until she clung to him, sobbing and laughing at once. He went public the next week. No prepared statement. Just him at a podium, Emily standing off stage in her navy blouse because she refused to hide. Voice steady despite the tremor, he said, I'm dying. I searched for months for someone I trusted with everything I've built. I found her, not in boardrooms or galas, but in the quiet moments when no one was watching. She's not here because of pity. She's here because she's the strongest person I know. Cameras caught the single tear that escaped down his cheek. Emily stepped forward, took his hand. The room held its breath. Procedure day arrived under armed guard. 2 beds in a sterile suite, separated by glass. Emily reached toward him as the anesthesiologist counted backward. Don't you dare leave me, she said. He smiled faintly. Wouldn't dream of it. Complications struck without mercy. Acute rejection. Fever spiking to dangerous levels. Doctors fought for 3 days while Emily paced the corridor outside ICU, refusing sleep, whispering every childhood story she could remember through the door when they allowed brief visits. On the 4th morning his temperature dropped. Eyes fluttered open. The first word he rasped was her name. She climbed onto the narrow bed beside him, careful of wires and tubes, pressed her lips to his temple. I'm here. Always. Recovery stretched into months of small victories, first time standing without help, first walk along the beach holding hands, first morning he woke without pain etching his face. Emily stepped into foundation leadership with quiet confidence, new literacy programs in rural Pakistan, solar-powered schools in sub-Saharan Africa, mental health initiatives for underserved communities. Alexander watched her from the sidelines, pride softening every line of his face. 6 months after the transplant, on the same cliffside bench, he knelt with difficulty and held out a simple platinum band. Marry me. Not because time is short. Because I want every remaining second to be yours. She said yes before he finished the sentence, pulling him up so she could kiss him properly. Their wedding was intimate, villa garden at sunset, 30 guests including her mother and a dozen children from the after-school program. Emily wore an ivory silk gown that draped lovingly over her curves, no shaping, no apologies. Alexander, leaner from recovery but brighter-eyed than she'd ever seen, never stopped smiling. During their first dance under fairy lights he held her close and murmured, "You didn't just save my body. You gave me back my heart." Years unfolded gently. The foundation doubled in reach. Emily became a quiet force on global stages, speeches delivered with warmth, not polish. Alexander stood beside her at every event, fingers laced with hers. In quiet evenings they returned to the terrace, waves whispering below, her head on his shoulder. Once she asked, soft, "Do you ever wish you'd chosen someone easier?" He turned, kissed her slowly. "I only wish I'd found you sooner." This is the truth beneath the fairy tale. Worth isn't measured by dress size, resume lines, or Instagram filters. It lives in the choices made when no one is watching, in the courage to stay kind when the world is cruel, in the quiet strength that doesn't shout but endures. You are already enough. Your heart, your hands, your unseen goodness, they can rewrite someone's ending, and perhaps your own beginning. If Emily and Alexander's journey stirred something inside you, reminded you that love can arrive in the most unexpected form, please hit like and subscribe. More stories like this are waiting, stories that prove hope is stubborn, and sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply choose to see each other clearly.